Greetings! This is I, Countess now van Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Today I'm continuing my discussion on tabletop, and diving deep into various tabletop-related content, giving you some lore information, all that kind of stuff, and we're back with some more Pathfinder Golarion lore. I'm introducing you to another nation in the world, this one in northern Garund, Rahadoum. So we'll be diving into deep into Rahadoum, talking about it, giving you information on it, its locations, places, all that kind of stuff, its history, timeline. You know, we're going to give you everything that you need to know about Rahadoum, the Kingdom of Man. We'll talk about that title there. But in the meantime, let's start where we always do with a lot of these videos, which, if you're joining me live on Twitch, great. If you're joining me for the recording on YouTube, also great. And your question of the day is, have you had adventures from Rahadoum, or you played a character from that country? That's what I have as a question for today. So anyway, let's switch over to the various books you might want to check out. As I always say, I like using the wiki site for a kind of basically outline, combined with some research from these books that I'm going to be showing off. If you want to go into where I try to give a good summary of everything, if you want to go into more details about anything, I would recommend doing your own research in these books here. These are probably the best place. The wiki is always a great place to start too. I'm going to try to go over at least all the information there, though. You know, that's kind of my goal with a little bit of extra. So the campaign settings book, Inner Sea World Guides, and if you're looking for something a little newer, the Lost Omens World Guide does give some information on Rahadoum, and this would probably be the most up-to-date stuff. Though all these places would have very interesting information on Rahadoum. I also don't have a lot of images of Rahadoum, so we're doing a couple of maps here, so I hope you enjoy them. It was a quest to find stuff to use as pictures here. So let's talk about the Kingdom of Man, which is a nation in northwest Garund, and it is unique among all the nations in the known world, that it is the only one that's forbidden to practice any kind of religions within its border. Its founding principle is summed up by a single phrase: let no mortal be beholden to a god. Its capital is Azur. We'll talk about Azur. Its government is a standard one, Council of Elders. Its languages are Common Osirian. And I'm going to butcher this name. Mald Oni, Keeper of the First Law, is the current ruler of Rahadoum. So we'll talk about that person too a little bit, just a little bit when we get to the government and the Council of Elders that we'll discuss. But, you know, we also have things like the laws of morality, which is the closest thing to a religion that they have to discuss. But in the meantime, let's talk about the history of Rahadoum. So, the thing about the region here is it is the site of the first human kingdom to establish itself historically after this devastation of Earthfall. This is a known fact, that the oldest known, basically post-Earthfall civilization, the Jiska Imperium, was formed in negative 4120 in this region. It dominated a lot of southern Garund, even some of the neighboring areas in southwestern Avastian during this time period. The Imperium was eventually defeated by forces of ancient Osirian. I've talked about Osirian in a different episode. Go check that out if you want to see the current nation. But the ancient Osirian Empire, just like the Jiska Imperium, I might want to talk about these individually as old empires too. Anyway, it was the Osirians and their descendant nomad allies of the Tekritian League that defeated them in negative 2764. And so this land that was Rahadoum became under the sway of Osirian. Ancient Osirian went into decline, and the area here split into a lot of independent city-states. Many of these states came to revere Nethys and Norgabur as deities. So that's kind of where we are in the ancient original timeline of its area. So, you know, Rahadoum is a territory. It's a number of independent city-states that are combined. So we get into the third millennia of the Age of Enthronement, when the face of Sarenrae began to spread across northern Garund. When it came into the northwest corner, basically where Rahadoum is on the map, it came into conflict with the previous two religions, Nethys and Norgabur. What this resulted in is the Oath War. So the Oath War began in 2498 AR, and it was a long and bloody religious conflict that inflicted untold devastation on the region. It was a conflict to see who would be the dominant religion in northwestern Garun. And it was an all-out war between zealots of these three religions. So, in 2555 AR, the members of the city-state of Azur, which would become the capital of Rahadoum, basically put an end to this religious conflict in their settlement by burning down all temples and banishing all clerics from their territory. And they introduced a new philosophy to replace religion that became the laws of morality. We talk about them when we talk about government. That's why I feel like it's a little bit appropriate. They spread across the region, and other city-states likewise abolished religions, swore to uphold the new laws, and were welcomed into the new nation of Rahadoum that was forming, and became formed in 2560, which ended the Oath Wars. So, like, if it wasn't for Azur and this entire thing, which was led by the philosopher Kalem Onaku, who basically enforced these laws of morality, banished deity worship, and made laws over religion, evicting all these religiously minded people on the pain of death, the Oath Wars would have kept going. It might have gone on for who knows how long. There is a effect of this. I've talked about Medogalti Island in the past, but a side effect of this Oath War was the Red Mantis assassins who worshipped the god Achikek, fled the persecution of Rahadoum in 2559, and settled on Medogalti Island, where they became their own, basically, country unto themselves, rather than beholden to one country. So that was the result of the Oath Wars / Rahadoum's kind of switch over here. Now, so, since this time period, religious practice has been banned from Rahadoum. It had brought peace from religious conflicts, but there has been a number of problems over the centuries that have led to the dark mutterings that the gods are punishing Rahadoum for their, basically, impiety. There was a plague that broke up in Ars and Bostini at least 3 times the last 500 years, and the desert has been threatening to devour the once lush city of Manket. The borders have remained stable pretty much, with the exception of the northern province of Cargelite, which during the Ever War with Cheliax was lost to them, so technically speaking is under Cheliax control since 4305, but it was mainly for Cheliax to control both ends of the Arch of Eredin, and has maintained it even now with what's going on in Cheliax. So they've managed to maintain it. One of the few things that they have maintained. That's a little bit on the, basically, setup of the history of Rahadoum. Now let's turn to this image here, and we'll talk about the geography a little bit and the cities of the region here. Because, that's always interesting to discuss. The geography and cities that you can check out here within the region. I'll take a drink before we get started here, because, I'm talking a lot. I need to wet my whistle. As we talk a little bit about, the major cities and locations. And we mentioned a couple of them here. But, anyway. So, it's an arid desert nation. The Path of Salt is leads eastward from the Cheliax-controlled area south of the Arch of Eredin to the port city of Manket. To the south of the country, the Napsoon Mountains border with the Sodden lands and stretch northwards to the country's interior. East of the Napsoon Mountains, the barrier wall makes up a border with the Milwaukee Expanse. There are a number of islands, which include Fountain Island, the Jagged Reach, and Nuat, which is largest of all of them. In the inner sea, the Biko Ranko Islands lie east of Manket. There's a number of rivers. The Uta River rises in the Nasput Mountains and flows northeast and borders with Thuvia before heading northwest into the inner sea. one of the country's longest rivers, the Winding River, flows westward from the Naslut Mountains past the mysterious area of marshes and forests known as the Eternal Oasis, before it merges with the Jodin River. Speaking of the Eternal Oasis, yeah, 1,000 springs flow forth from the ground, feeding the trees in this strange area where the Winding River just goes through. Technically speaking, no rivers flow in or out of that region. They just flow by them. That's an important thing to know. So the Winding River, though it goes near to the Eternal Oasis, doesn't go through it. And it is actually very easy to see the border between the Eternal Oasis and the desert. Trees abruptly stop, giving way to barren, waterless plain. This transition may be magical. Others whisper that mysterious residents have protected from the outsiders. It's a weird area that there's probably something dangerous about, but there really isn't a lot of information about it overall. It's just basically this jungle, wetland, west of the Winding River in the middle of the desert, just that has pools of water, marshes, lush trees, everything. Stuff that you would see in the Molongi Expanse. And you know, just that separation between the area is just so strange. Yeah. I think that's mentioning most of the islands and stuff, the rivers. Let me just see if there's anything else I need to mention about any of these places. I'll mention a little bit about Nuat, since it is the largest island in the Arcadian Ocean. It's opposite the city of Bonswai on the Grun's northern shore. It's about 50 miles off the coast of Rahadoum, and it serves as Rahadoum's Navy's first line of defense against pirates of the Shackles to the south. The Navy maintains a sizable fleet, and the sea lanes from Rahadoum to the capital of Azur, which pass Nuat, are heavily patrolled. Only the bravest or most foolhardy smugglers and pirates would even try this area. Most of the island is flat, close to sea level, and enjoys warm rain from the south, and it is the most fertile land in all of Rahadoum. A lot of fishing and agriculture here, and a lot of food is actually imported from now to the mainland, especially to Azur. It is risk of storms, and the inhabitants are very superstitious. The Pure League, which we'll talk about, tolerates these beliefs, which includes the Thin Men, spirits which are said to haunt the island's cane fields. We'll talk about the Pure Legion. It's involved with all the stuff we're going to get into about the country and its laws. I put it here. Sorry, put it in the wrong spot for my organization's sake. But that's, not. And there is also a Pathfinder Society ship, the Grinning Pixie, which suggests there's an abandoned Sohagan city that lies on the ocean floor off Nuat's western coast, but no one's investigated the rumor. Because it's a kind of crazy thing to investigate. Not lying, it's probably pretty dangerous to go there. Let's talk about the cities in the region here, too. Also, I will note before I talk about the cities, there are a number of Jeskian ruins in this area. As much as, you know, there was connection with the Osirians and stuff like that, where they conquered the area, there probably is some things, but things like the hanging city of Teskra, the Tomb of the Emperors, Lost Yamai, there are a lot of fabled and important ruins for the Jeska Imperium within the territory that remain here. So, we'll talk about Azur a little bit, the capital. It is the birthplace of laws and morality. It's a bustling trade port. The appearance has been greatly modified more recently. It's a metropolis. It's also known as Port Godless. It's near the mouth of the Winding River on the northeast coast of Garun. It is the largest settlement in the entire country. New construction has been built with unlikely and drastic angles, making clear the builders were trying to free their work from the confines of geometry. Like most of the members of the city find themselves within the confines of edicts of gods long ago. The newer buildings' exteriors have been coated in colorful paints, while also having gargoyles added on the same buildings. These updated and colorful exteriors have a simple facade, however, as they hide shoddy, poor construction tenements crammed within a climate refugees of their, basically, desertification. And of course, I mentioned Nuat, having a lot of food coming from there. And, so yeah. Since, the War of Oaths destruction here, it's been a lot of stuff. and they've managed to maintain themselves since then. They have an economy fueled on trade, contacts, and local innovation. The Apsis Consortium, a transnational trade organism with interest throughout the Inner Sea, is aware of this and has placed a regional headquarters in the city. So they are trying to increase trade with a lot of places to improve themselves. And we'll talk about politics when we talk about their government and stuff there. There is also sometimes strange phenomena here that says as a result of invisible wars between celestial and fiends that do battle where no local bias or mortal inhabit will interfere, stuff like that. So we'll talk about Bodosani, which is another city on the Arcadian Ocean on the west coast. There are rumors within this sea a cult of Iomedae has recently gained enough credence to be considered a threat. So there's an increased activity of the Pure Legion. Again, we'll talk about them. There's also a famine that's been setting the place, making fully developing the resources needed for it difficult for the Legion to kind of look into this. They are now looking to outside help either rout the cult by force or to create a public spectacle that they could then use to clean up. Famines and cults are not the only threats to this city. At 3 times in the last half century, victims of terrible plagues and pirates in the shackles make trouble with their navy and trading vessels that come from the port. They are a major port near the Eye of Abednego, so pirates kind of flee here for refuge. So there's a lot of seafaring threats here. There's also the Sword Pit here, which is a thriving black market of religious artifacts, holy symbols, divine magic. Contrary to a lot of places in the rest of the Inner Sea, cultists of evil gods like Norgormer make common cause with the faithful of Sarenrae here, as they are all protecting the sequels of their illegal trade. They escape the censure of the Pure League by organizing a smaller but much more obvious black market and more mundane goods that instead draws their attention. So they make like a fake black market, so their real black market continue go. Rahadoum is a town on the southern edge of Rahadoum. It's the main pass linking Rahadoum to the southern lands. It was a trade center dealing with Lyrgin and other lands to the south, but when the Eye of Abednego came about, destroyed Lyrgin and a lot of those countries, it basically lost a lot of its power. Today it's a fortress town. It guards from incursions of monsters and cultists from down in that region. Its center of defenses and network is a defensive network known as the Rain Wall. Its folks that live there are hardy, who take pride in their harsh lives, and see the devastation of the South as a warning to what happens to trust their lives in gods. So, yeah. Certainly, that kind of this thing like, oh, look what happens when you trust gods. I will also notice there's 2 cities that we know the names of that I can't give you a lot of information of, Haqqani and Wadi al-Hesser. I don't know a lot about them, but I did want to mention those 2 also, because don't have information. Anyway. Manicat. It's a port city. It's on the Inner Sea side of things. It was famous for its lush gardens, but most have dried up in the last 100 years as the deserts encroached farther into settlement. It's a major metropolis. So basically, wizards from the city's arcane academy, the Golarion, have been planning an intricate series of shifting trenches and barriers to drive the sands back, hiring mechanical engineers and technology from Alkenstar, and called on the local the avarice of the local brass dragons, basically bribing them. So a lot of resources have been spent to study the feasibility of a lot of these projects of keeping the desert today, and it is the focus of learning in Rahadoum because of this. There are those that fear that the approaching desert that's trying to get rid of this place that was once a lush region on a coastline is punishment from the gods for the heresy of the place, but few say that publicly. Pathfinder Society has a foothold in the city with venture captain Obo from the Swordmeat Lodge here. One of the recent covert actions was to combat the outbreak of Night Plague in the city in 2710. And they are also home to a large and influential thieves guild. Anyway, Alright, and the final city we'll talk about today is Macum. It's a village, but we'll mention it here because it's one of the settlements on the arid south side of the Napster Mountains. Its residents type a drowned ghost who inhabits the Oath Wars, a ruined temple of a long-forgotten god in the marshy outskirts of the town. It's a fishing village. So basically, like, they're just like, look, god of the old war that, fucked up our country, that we've gotten rid of the gods for, or like, being of that, please just, keep yourself to yourself and not bother us. Let's talk about the government of this entire place. That's an important thing to discuss. We'll put up here the laws of morality. That's what we're seeing here. So, the Kingdom of Man is ruled by a council of elders comprised of representatives from every major settlement and nomadic group. The Keeper of the First Law is elected from the council and serves as overseer for 5 years. Maldani, as the current keeper, is a popular man and has an unprecedented 4th term in office. He's well-liked. He's an adept leader, a keen politician. Few keepers are ever elected even more than once. And his success has increased the power on the international stage as well. Which also means the continuity of rule has helped with other nations, not relying on the term of a keeper who disagrees with them. And Malduni has been able to basically unite a lot of the various factions to help combat a lot of the desertification in there. Let's talk about the Council of Elders for a minute, and we'll talk about the Law of Morality, and then we'll talk about some other things related to what's going on in the government here. We'll also then talk about the Pure Legion after that. So the Council of Elders, I kind of mentioned the bits of it. To aid the government's country atheistic policies, they ban all religious books. Some books are particularly prosecuted, such as the majestic Book of Prime Ascended, which states that mortals may hope to ascend to divine status, and it's been proven, so I understand why that's kind of there. They are headquartered in Asmir and Rahadoum, so that's basically a lot of what's going on. Yeah. The laws of morality. So, I talked about the history of it now, where it came from. Let's talk about the principles. The laws do not refute the existence of the divine. They forbid anybody from worshipping or giving any form of obedience to any god or other divine being. They're widely used by the nation of Rahadoum and were instrumental in its country's founding. So again, they don't refute that the divine exists. They just forbid worshiping. According to those that follow the laws of morality, religion represents a type of spiritual servitude akin to trading one's eternal soul. What's more, faith is perceived as a source of conflict and division among mortals, blinding them to rationality. The Rahadoum are frequently labeled as atheists. They don't question the exhibit of deities. Instead, they reject the act of worship, viewing gods as potent, whimsical elites who manipulate mortals as playthings. And in the Rahadoum's perspective, the Rahadoumite perspective, is preferable to live in liberty despite an accompanying challenges rather than as an eternal thrall. So the laws are enforced by the who I've mentioned before, Pure Legion, a trained militia who searches any ship entering the country for religious paraphernalia and harshly prosecute anybody proselytizing. However, as the gods are a powerful force in Golarion, this doesn't completely eradicate worship. Native Rahadoumis find themselves called to a faith, and the country's most... If a native finds himself called to a faith, the country's most tempting target beneficiaries are from all over the Inner Sea region, and there are small groups of worship that exist throughout their land, but they're very secretive. And the only known law we have is the one I said earlier, is let no mortal be beholden to a god. Anyway. The Pure Legion, as I had mentioned. They look for spoken, printed scriptures, sermon, proselytizing, holy symbols, paraphernalia. They carry out meticulous searches of persons entering the ports of Azor, Manket, Bastani. They patrol the desert country's interior. They look for underground cults of all kinds. The Legion rolls out to areas to take care of the offending worshippers. For force, manipulating basically unrelated public disturbance, which they can clean up. They generally do things that make them look like heroes, is the best way of saying it. They do stand apart from other government organs in Rahadoum, as they're only answerable to the first laws of the law of morality. The central organization is a citadel of Shepherd's Rock, which houses a vast store of confiscated religious texts. The leader of the organism is Karasim, the Sword of Man, is also based at the citadel, and the traditional clothing is gold-white garments that provide resistance to divine magic. Oh, I got an image of Pure Legion person. I can switch to that for a second. I can add one here. I'll just switch to that for a second. That's not funny. There we go. That's someone from the Pure Legion. Got to see them for a second. I said only a second. Anyway, so that's the Pure Legion there. Okay. Whew. So most of their military is the Pure Legion. That's an important thing to do, especially when it comes to peacekeeping and inflecting that. Doesn't mean they don't have other military, though. The Council of Elders is concerned with the future of the country. They don't like digging around the past. They leave the pursuits of the past to wizards of like Manket's Golarion. So it's basically the government doesn't really look at the past very much. The Navy is the main military that they have, as I've mentioned before. And then again, for land army, they pretty much just have the Pure Legion more than anything. There is a large naval base near Azir, and also Nuat, Bostani. There is the Rain Wall, which I mentioned, protecting from there. They have very poor relations with Thuvia, doing that country have a large number of worshippers of Sarenrae, and arguing that that religion was most responsible for causing the Oath Wars, which kind of devastated them. Relations with Osirian are strained for basically the same reason, but again, these nations benefit by being good neighbors to each other, so pragmatism has won out overall. Rahadoum has very little interest in the Long Expanse, and pretty much just hate the Shackles because it messes with their shipping. Their other neighbors are the Soddenlands, Hurricane Blasted, which is up there, Cheliax, which is dominated by devils, and the Religious Assassins of Neogalti Island, and are all seen as vindication for Rahadoum's decision to ban religion. All these three areas. One of them, Religious Assassins, devil-dominated Cheliax, worshipping Asmodee, and Heyblaze, and then, of course, the Soddenlands, destroyed by a hurricane thought to be caused by a deity. So, their fine cloth, exotic produce, and gemstones are things that they produce here in Rahadoum that are sought after by merchants. As long as you don't bring any religious scriptures in, and don't have anything that gets in the way of profits that way. Exports include salts, dates, tropical fruits from the Eternal Oasis, base metals, tools, herbal remedies, and they are a major importer of other foods too for the region. They're also a major exporter of ingenious machines that produce and incorporate engineers, as its citizens have been forced to rely on intellect and imagination to solve the problems without divine magic. So they've been doing a lot of things that what they don't have divine magic for, they've been finding ways to deal with that. Now, they do have trade issues with Cheliax. It hinders their, basically, things. Cheliax controls Harespent Strait, which is connection between the Inner Sea and the Arcadian Ocean, and they tax any ships that pass through there, while secretly funding a number of privateers to attack non-Cheliax ships in the area. Because of this, Rahadoum has conscripted a number of native merchant vessels in a massive merchant marine fleet. It's been successful that merchants of other nations wishing to transport goods westward through the Arch of Eridan have taken to using armed Rahadoum ships to do so. Typically, they hand over their cargo in Maquette, travel across the country to Azir, and reclaim it once it's passed the Arch. So they basically have been going around the Arch because they tax things that goes through there, and using this overland trade to avoid that there. Of course, shipping to the south has suffered from pirates from the Shackles for a long time, and the Eye of Abanago has been kind of a problem down there. Yeah. So we do have to hit up a little bit more on religion when it comes to Rahadoum, though, and the Inhabitants, and we'll finish up for the day with those. So, the laws of morality is effectively what religion would be here. It prohibits the obedience to a god, but it is permitting personal faith in divine magic. That's a kind of important difference between the tenets of the laws of morality. So it's not that personal faith and divine magic aren't allowed, but you can't be obedient to a god. Religion is seen as a form of indentured servitude, in which a pious sells their souls. Religion can encourage violence, divisions that blind for inherent reasons. So they don't, as I said, they don't disbelieve gods. And basically, gods are almost like aristocrats to them. So yeah. And if you're a foreigner visiting and you are a faith practitioner, you are welcome in Rahadoum as long as you do not proselytize or perform religious rituals while you're in there. And there are a lot of visitors that are greeted in their docks with propagandists to extort welcomers to reject and rejoice. There are some, though, permitted and secret faiths. There are some faiths that resemble religions that are tolerated because they don't worship a deity directly. The green faith, occultism, astrology, diabolism, genie binding, and with certain caveats, all are seen as okay and tolerated. Druids, in particular, are openly welcome in Rahadoum and hired by the government to combat the desertification. So if you're a druid, that's the kind of divine caster they have there, because you don't worship a deity directly, you worship kind of nature itself. And despite the laws of morality, there are many religions that do have presence in the nation, but they aren't powerful enough to pull the nation from its avoidance of the divine, and it's all done in secret. And there are extraplanar agents of the gods that sometimes use Rahadoum as a neutral area which do with each other, which is a really interesting idea too, because none of them have a control there. It's a neutral ground for a lot of beings from faiths. Each know that they have few resources here to carry out any treachery. So there are, as I talked about earlier, some unexplained supernatural events that happen in the cities. Who inhabits there? Mostly humans, with the most common ethnicity being Gurundi or Moxie. There is also a significant number of false-spawn tieflings, who, owing to their Ashura heritage, share the atheist nation's disdain of the gods. The Shemtej catfolk, that are nomads, roam amongst the most remote and dangerous reaches of the deserts in freewheeling caravan trains. They're believed by many in the region to be a divinely blessed children of the cat-head protector god Set. They're also believed to ward off many of the desert's most dangerous and evil spirits. So society here. Well, you know, there is a place in society that's normally occupied by religion, which in this case, for Rahadoum, is instead filled with a deep and respectful rhetoric and philosophy. So most Rahadoumi are well-educated and active civic participants. There is no religious tenets to define morality or accept behavior. They place a high value on self-discipline, family loyalty, especially among nomads. Centuries of facing their own destinies without much hope of a favor welcome from Pharasma after death has lent many in this place to be darkly optimistic, possessing faith in themselves since they have no one else to depend on but each other, believing they must make the most of their mortal lives despite all these hardships. Many citizens use narcotics, especially those imported from Kaptesh, but even here self-discipline is expected. Drug use is no excuse for sloppy behavior. Slavery is legal in Rahadoum, and is generally quite common also. And because Rahadoum people cannot rely on healing power of divine magic, natural healing methods, such as medicines, have become quite effective here. So they develop more medicines here also. There are a number of dangerous creatures in the wilderness, fierce lamias, giant antlions, sand traps, the legendary, which I'm going to... Zakar, which are serpentine creatures of pure darkness, a dragon-type creature, the one, Kanjar Kanyar, Stone Maul, is within the area here. So yeah, if you want to look up Zakhak, that is a being that can be found here as dangerous things. And that one lays particularly in his lair in Gazetteer in the Napsine Mountains. But that is Rahadoum. Very interesting nation to talk about because it is a godless nation, but it isn't an atheist nation. And I think that's the kind of distinction between that. Definitely. So, I got a message I should respond to. A lot easier to get interrupted while you're kind of streaming and recording these things, honestly. Rahadoum is this country that has a deep and rich history, but it also, because of some more recent history, things like the Oath Wars, they almost want to forget their history and live in the present, which is one of those kinds of things that a little bit of a sad thing, because the Jiskik Imperium and this deep, rich history that is the original civilization to build out of Earthfall is something to be proud of, yet they don't. They aren't. And that's something that's so sad about the current nation. The heart of a very powerful nation that picked itself off up after a near-apocalyptic event that destroyed the world and many of the civilizations. It is impressive. Yes, it only lasted for like about 1,500 years before it fell to another ancient empire that was there. But this deep history is very important. I'm almost done. So you can see. You'll have to let me know in a little bit. Have them text me. The problems that happened, the great religious war that happened there, shaped this kingdom in a very interesting way. And it goes to show that these faithful of these religions, though we don't hear about these issues the same way in a lot of other nations, it wouldn't take much for this kind of thing to happen. And that's the thing that can kind of be almost scary here, that these religious wars could happen. And the Oath War could have become something a lot more, if not for the laws of morality. As much as it has been a very big turning point and change in Rahadoum's history, a change in the way that they work, it is an important note that it happened. It may have saved much of the region from a nigh endless war of religions that could have continued on. Who knows how far it would have spread? Who knows what kind of damage it could have done? And they are in a difficult situation. It could be that there is nothing divine connected up with the desertification. It's just a change in the environment of the region. Who knows? Or it could be divine influence. But the country is, in a way, dying. Which is unfortunate, too, because as much as they are a bit extreme in their anti-religious ways, where their beliefs that the divine shouldn't be worshipped because of their actions, it still isn't something that, it reflects upon their perseverance in a way. And we could only hope that that perseverance is going to carry them into the future and allow them to survive the darkness which comes. And maybe the ingenuity and intelligence will add some interesting things to the future. Develop more and new interesting ways of helping the environment, beyond magical ways to help keep the environment alive in interesting ways. These little changes and things are very interesting to look at, and something that maybe should be considered in a way. That's a thing to think about. The plight of Rahadoum might mean a new level of uptick in greatness in much of the technology, magical science, culture, engineering of the world because of their efforts. Similar to Alkenstar, because of its nature, where it's at, has driven science in a way very rapidly. The possibility of this Renaissance-era technology and beyond, because it is a civilization that had great ancient civilizations, things of technology have existed on this planet before. It's not out of the purview of these things existing. It's not that they couldn't be rebuilt and reinvented. Development, improvement can occur. And yes, there are still dark paths to this region here, and certainly in Northern Grun, things like slave taking is still a big thing here. A lot of dark histories still exist. But perhaps because of a lot that's going on here, things can change eventually. And we can see growth that occurs with the growth of society and this sort of scientific free thinking in a way that doesn't involve religion because of the nature of the country there, but involves thinking in creative, interesting philosophical way that maybe we could continue to see Rahadoum evolve over the next couple of 100 years as long as they find a way to survive. Lots. Anyway, that'll be it for today. Hope you enjoyed. If you're watching this live on Twitch, thank you very much. A follow would be nice here. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like the video. Make sure you get a subscription. Any of the various other things like, leaving the comment if you've used Rahadoum, been to Rahadoum at all in any adventures. Ow, I hurt my nail. Ring the bell if you want to see more stuff and get apprised of it when it first comes out. I do have social media stuff right now. It's only a Discord and Twitter.com. I'm planning on adding a few others, so please expect those to the future and check them out. Schedule. If you want to see these live, the Pathfinder stuff are every Thursdays in the afternoon, usually between 1 or 2, but sometimes earlier or later depending on the schedule. I do other stuff like this on Tuesdays. That's a very random day at the same time. On Saturdays, I do World of Darkness stuff, but that's usually earlier in the day around 11. A little bit more exact on time. Crimson Queen, live Pathfinder show every Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. EST, and discussing tabletop every Saturday, 6 p.m., most every Saturday, where I talk about news of the week in the tabletop world and deeper discussions. We dive deep into topics based on tabletop. That'd be interesting to hear that. I do also some streams on Twitch and some other stuff, so if you want to check those out, the Twitch streams are Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays for gaming and stuff, but those aren't as important as the tabletop, so I'm really here for. Okay, I'm going to get running. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed learning about Rahadoum today and diving deep into this really interesting nation that, has a possibility for a very interesting history and to help affect the world of Golarion and the region of the Inner Sea in very interesting ways. As things evolve in the kind of multinationalism and connections between and evolution of a lot of cultures that have been occurring over the last few hundred years within the region. So, until the next time, though, that we talk about anything, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.